The last thing I expected was for my mother to point at the front door and say the word out. Just out. Not we need to talk. Not, I'm disappointed in you. Just out. Out of the house I grew up in. Out of the bedroom I had been sleeping in for 2 years. 3 days earlier, my parents had quietly given away $50,000. Not to me. Not to my sister. To a man I had never heard of. A man who showed up at our kitchen table on a Wednesday night and walked out with a folder, a pen, and every dollar my grandmother had ever left behind. I only found out about it because my mother made one careless mistake. She left a single piece of paper sitting on the kitchen table, right next to my coffee mug, and what was written across the top of that paper is something I will never forget no matter how many years pass. And if you are still watching this right now, you are sharper than 90% of the people who scroll past this thumbnail every single day. Most people click away in the first 10 seconds. The fact that you stayed means one thing. Your gut is already telling you that something is wrong here. And it is. What I'm about to tell you is something families almost never say out loud in front of cameras. It is the truth about the money parents hide. The truth about who they leave it to, and the exact moment a mother decides her own son is no longer worth protecting. Stay with me. By the end of this story, you will not be able to look at your own family the same way again, and you will never, ever let anyone quietly sign your future away in a folder on a kitchen table. Let me take you back to the very beginning so everything makes sense. My name is Daniel. I was 28 years old when this happened, and for the last 2 years, I had been living with my parents in the same small house I grew up in. The one on Maple Street with the cracked driveway and the blue mailbox my dad never bothered to fix. I had moved back in after my online business failed. I was 26, I had run out of savings, and I could not afford rent in the city on my own. So my parents said, "Come home, Daniel. We'll help you until you get back on your feet." And I believed them. I believed them the way only a child of honest parents can, completely, without a single doubt in my mind. That is exactly why what happened next is so hard for me to talk about even today. There is a moment in this story that I have not told anyone. Not my sister, not my closest friends, not even the attorney I later sat across from at a desk covered in paperwork. It is one sentence. One single sentence my mother said to me in a quiet hallway on a Saturday morning. That sentence is the reason my father went silent at the dinner table for the rest of the week. That sentence is the reason my sister stopped returning my calls for 3 months. And I promise you, I am going to give you that sentence word for word before this video is over. But if I drop it on you right now, you will not understand why it destroyed me. So first, let me show you what led up to it. Let me show you the week everything I thought I knew about my family fell apart. It started on a Monday, and it started so quietly that I almost missed it. I woke up around 7. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and answered a few emails for a freelance job I had just landed. My mom was already up, cooking eggs. My dad was still asleep down the hall. For about 20 minutes, nothing in the world felt wrong. Then my mom's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and something shifted on her face. Not fear, not anger, just surprise, the kind you make when someone you forgot existed suddenly calls out of nowhere. She stepped into the living room to take it. I could hear her voice but not her words. Just the tone, soft, careful, almost agreeing. She came back a few minutes later, kissed me on the head, and said the strangest sentence of the week. "We're going to have a guest for dinner this week." I asked who. She said, "Just someone your father knows from a long time ago. Don't worry about it." I went back to my emails. I did not worry. On Tuesday my dad came home early. He was in a good mood. He was smiling. He bought groceries, real groceries, the kind he never buys. Thick steaks. A bottle of red wine with a label I could not pronounce. He told me my dad's friend was coming over tomorrow, and he wanted it to be nice. I still did not feel anything wrong. On Wednesday, I finally met the man who would take everything from me. His name was Gary. He was somewhere in his late 50s, thin, with gray hair combed back, a perfectly clean suit, and a smell of expensive cologne that filled our small kitchen before he even sat down. He shook my hand firmly, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "So you are the son. Daniel, right? Your dad has told me a lot about you." I said, "Nice to meet you." Dinner was strange from the first fork. My mother kept laughing at things Gary said that were not even funny. My dad kept filling his wine glass without looking at me once. After dinner, as I cleared plates at the counter, Gary pulled out a folder. He opened it in front of my father. My dad's face went pale. My mother looked away from the table entirely. Gary reached into his coat. He pulled out a black pen. He slid the paper across to my dad and said, "Sign here." My father, my own father, the man who had taught me to ride a bike in this same driveway, signed it. I did not see the whole paper that night. I did not see the dollar amount. But I was about to, and that is when the real horror began. Thursday was quiet, the kind of quiet that fills a house when something has just been decided and no one wants to talk about it. Gary left after dinner, and my parents said it was about old business. I did not push. Something in my stomach told me not to. I went to bed early. On Friday morning, I woke to the sound of low arguing. Not yelling, quiet arguing, the kind that happens between two people who have been married for 30 years and have already said everything they can say. I heard my mother say, "We should tell him." And I heard my father say, "Not yet. Not until it's done." Tell me what I thought. I got out of bed and walked down the hall. The arguing stopped the second my footsteps hit the floorboards. My dad smiled his forced smile and said good morning. My mom asked if I slept okay. I said yes. I walked to the kitchen, made coffee, opened my laptop at the table, and that is when I saw it. Sitting right there next to my coffee mug, not hidden, not in an envelope, just left in plain sight, was a single piece of paper. At the top of that paper, printed in big black letters, it said, "Gift of $50,000, received and agreed." Below that line, my father's signature. Below that, Gary's signature. I sat there for a full 60 seconds without moving. I just stared at the words. I did not know who Gary was. I did not know what the gift was for. I did not understand how two parents who had told me, only last year, that they could barely afford my mother's medical bills had signed away $50,000 in a single evening. I picked the paper up. I read it twice. I read it 3 times. Then I walked into the living room where my mom was sitting on the couch and I said, "Mom, what is this?" She saw the paper and went white. She stood up. She walked right to me. She pulled it out of my hands and said, "Daniel, I will explain this. But not today. Today is not the day." I asked why. She said, "Because I said so." And she walked away. I could not sleep Friday night. I kept thinking about the number. $50,000. Where did they even get $50,000? My grandmother had died 10 years earlier, and my parents had told me, clearly, more than once, that almost nothing was left after her final hospital bills. So either they had lied to me then, or they were lying to me now, or both. I stared at the ceiling and waited for morning. Saturday came. I woke up. I sat down at the kitchen table with both of them. I put my hands flat on the table and I said, "I saw the paper. I know about the 50,000. I need to know what is going on." My father looked down at his hands for a long time. Then he said, "Daniel, you are 28 years old. This is not your business." I said, "It's my business if it affects me." He asked how it affects me. I told him, "Because last year you told me you could barely keep this house, and now you've signed away $50,000 to a stranger. Where did that money come from?" Silence. Long silence. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at his coffee. Then my mother spoke. "It was your grandmother's money," she said. "Wait, what? Grandma has been gone for 10 years. They had told me there was nothing left." I asked how much of it was Grandma's money. She said, "Enough." "Enough for what?" I asked. She said, "Enough for what we needed to do." I asked what they needed to do. And this is the moment, the exact moment I promised you earlier. My mother looked at me straight in the eye. Cold. Clear. Like she had rehearsed it for days. And she said very quietly, "We needed to pay someone to make sure you never get a single dollar of what is left." I did not move. I did not speak. The kitchen clock was the loudest sound in the world. I finally said, "Mom, what are you talking about?" She did not blink. She said, "Your father and I have made a decision. You are not going to inherit anything from us. Not $1. Not 1 cent. And we paid a professional to make sure of it. His name is Gary. That is what the $50,000 was for. I still did not yell. I do not know why I did not yell. Maybe because the sentence had knocked the wind out of me so fast that nothing came out. I sat there and I asked very quietly, why? And this is what my mother said to me, word for word, sitting at that same kitchen table where we used to play board games when I was 8. She said, Daniel, you are 28 years old and you have nothing to show for it. She said, you started a business. It failed. You moved back home. You saved no money. You have no partner. You have no plan. She said, your sister is 25. She is a nurse. She has a fiancé. She saves money. She has never once asked us for help. She said, I love you, Daniel. But love does not pay the bills. And I am not going to leave everything to a child who cannot take care of himself. And then she said the worst part. The part that took me weeks to even believe was real. She said, Gary is going to make this permanent. Even if we change our minds later, you cannot fight it in court. By the time we pass, there will be nothing left for you to claim. That is what the $50,000 was. It was not a gift. It was a price. A price my parents paid, out of what was supposed to be my future, to make sure I never had one. I got up from the table. I walked into my bedroom. I closed the door behind me, and I did not come out for the rest of the day. Sunday. I had packed my things the night before while everyone was asleep. 2 duffel bags, a laptop, a change of clothes. That was it. I was sitting on the edge of my bed when there was a quiet knock on the door. My mother said, Daniel, we need to talk. I opened the door. She was standing in the hallway in her good coat. My father was behind her, also dressed up, like they were on their way somewhere. Talk about what? I said. She said, about you leaving. I said, leaving? She said, yes, leaving. Today. I said, Mom, I just found out yesterday that you and Dad spent $50,000 to make sure I never inherit anything, and now you are kicking me out? My mother did not flinch. Not even a little. She looked at me with the same expression she had used at breakfast, and she said the cleanest sentence I have ever heard in my life. Daniel, you have 2 bags in your room. You are ready to go. You have been ready for a long time. We are simply formalizing it. I looked at my father. He did not say one single word. He just nodded. I said, Mom, I am your son. She said, yes, you are. And you can call us anytime. But you cannot live here anymore. This is no longer your home. I asked why. She said, because we paid $50,000 to make sure it would not be. And that was it. She pointed at the front door. I picked up my 2 bags. I walked out of the house I grew up in. I did not say goodbye. Neither did they. The blue mailbox was still cracked. The driveway was still broken. And I was standing on the sidewalk of my own childhood with no family left to call. That was 6 months ago. Today I live in a small 1-bedroom apartment across town. I work 2 jobs. I save every dollar. I do not speak to my parents. And I have learned one thing that I want to leave you with today. Family is not always what you were taught. Blood does not always run thicker than money. And sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most will quietly sign your future away on a Wednesday evening while you are doing the dishes, and they will not even bother to warn you before they sign it. I did not make this video for pity. I do not want you to feel sorry for me. I made it because I think a lot of you are sitting in a house right now where something is off, where the people who are supposed to be your safety net are quietly, slowly, making decisions about your life that you do not yet know about. And I want you to see it before it is too late, because by the time you find a piece of paper on the kitchen table, it is already too late. If this story hit you anywhere, if you felt even a flash of it in your chest, drop a single word in the comments. Family. Just that word. So I know who I am talking to. And yes, there is more. Because what Gary did 6 months later. How he walked away with even more money and disappeared. That is another story of its own. I might tell that one next week. For now, hold on tight to the people who actually show up for you. Not the ones who say they will. The ones who actually do. I will see you in the next one.